Please help me welcome So Young Kang. Time to disrupt yourself, transforming mindsets.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's really a privilege to be here. It's my first time actually speaking here in Zurich. So thank you so much for the invitation. I actually live in Singapore. And so I have the privilege of being here in Switzerland because we're part of the Kickstart Accelerator. And so actually, Kickstart Accelerator, Tim is actually back there. So if you have questions, he's back there. And that's a little shout out, right, for that. And so today we're going to talk about kind of disrupting and transforming our mindsets, because learning, remember back in the day, well, before we were all born, when learning was actually about asking questions. It was about the Socratic method of actually causing people to think, right? When learning was truly learning and actually expanding our minds, not shrinking our minds. So as we think about the 21st century and the skills that I think all of us know, right? It's no longer a question of what skills do we need for 21st century, which is, by the way, happening right now. So it's no surprise. And so I just summarized, I think many of you may have seen the World Economic Forum on the top 10 skills needed for 21st century. It's really hard to memorize all 10 because we like bite-sized things. And so I bite-sized those 10 into what I call the 4 C's. And those 4 C's are creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication. We actually, all of you probably know that already. So the question is, why are we using learning and teaching methods that are not developing these 4 skills? And why do we continue to teach in ways that actually close the mind and not open the mind? Isn't it time for a disruption? What do you guys think? Exactly. So the idea of learning should not be about knowing. So why don't we stop throwing knowledge at people and hoping some of it sticks? Had a meeting actually before we came here today, shocking insight from one of the professors at ETH. And he said, so I thought basically that based on old research, that about 80% of knowledge leaves after you leave a workshop in about a month. So within a month of leaving, 80%. So that's what I thought. So that was the research. He totally corrected me. He said, actually, after an amazing 3-day workshop, guess how many days it takes to get back to nothing? 2.5 days. Right? It's horrible. And we're spending billions, trillions of dollars, right? Maybe not trillions. Okay, we're spending billions of dollars in our companies, and all of you with your amazing training budgets, spending all this money because we're trying to develop people. So that 2.5 days later, it basically was a waste. Horrible. I think we need to evolve to thinking about how we are learning by doing, because the science of adult learning, not just So Young says, but the science of adult learning and the research says that if we actually do something, the retention is actually, and that's the way we truly learn. So I'm going to challenge you, and obviously all of us know that knowing is not the same thing as doing. And one of the examples I often use is in leadership. You can have a PhD in leadership and read 5 books, have been a writer and write books on leadership. But if you're kind of a jerk and no one likes you, I hate to tell you this, you're not a good leader. So you know about the topic of leadership, but being a good leader is a completely different thing. And so that's the idea about application, which we all intuitively know, yet we continue to go back into that default mode, which is what we probably grew up within, which is the Industrial Revolution style of education. So what do? We took a broken system, or rather a system that was designed to create human robots, because we didn't have human robots back then. We didn't have good machines. You needed to create those Ford cars to be very, very consistent. So then you created the education system, which basically trained a bunch of humans to act like those machines. So now as we evolve our time, we've now taken that same old mindset and we've just applied it to corporate learning. So it's time for a huge disruption. And I think the disruption starts with all of you here, because you guys are the decision makers. You are the movers and shakers if you choose to disrupt yourself and your mindset. So I think as HR, you can say, oh, I don't have authority. I can't make decisions. Then guess what? You won't. Right? Or you can say, I'm going to make a difference and I'm going to be a leader. All of you actually can choose to be leaders. It's your choice. No one's going to anoint you and say, oh, by the way, oh, as of today, congratulations, you are now a leader. Does that make sense? So as HR people, it's absolutely critical that you disrupt yourselves. And you look in the mirror and you ask yourself, am I going to make a difference? And if you choose to make a difference, guess what? You probably have a better chance of making that difference, because the world is actually hungry for leaders who are going to look and think differently, and not for people who are going to take what's been given to them and complete that. So I think the question, and I think the challenge for all of you as leaders and as disruptors, because the fact that you're sitting here, congratulations, you're already part of the way there. You're already a disruptor. So taking that mindset, let's stop spoon-feeding people. Let's stop insulting the intelligence of each other and of our employees by just shoving more knowledge down their throats. Let's invite them into that process of learning. Let's have them co-create. Let's learn from each other. I loved the speakers, and I was like, actually, I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't tweeting my friends. I was tweeting what you guys were saying. So these days, when you're on your phones, it doesn't mean that you're disengaged. Usually, it means you're more engaged, right? Because you're taking notes, you're taking photos, and you want us to share that. So let's stop doing that, and let's think about the idea of increasing ownership of knowledge. That's kind of, in some ways, the big thing that we're all trying to accomplish, right? How do we get employees to take ownership? Wouldn't you all love that, right? Hopefully you're not scared by that, because you wouldn't lose your jobs. I think your jobs would just evolve to higher value-adding things than forcing people to learn. So we use a very simple framework that I call learn, think, apply, and share. So for those of you who are familiar with transformative learning theory, so all of the adult learning nerds here, how many of you have heard of that? Yeah. Actually, I have a free T-shirt to give away. So if someone wants to describe to the group what transformative learning theory is, you get a free T-shirt. Who would like to describe for the crowd what is that? It's a free T-shirt. It's really cute. It has gnomes on it. Who wants to try? What is the definition of transformative learning theory? I only have 4 minutes left, guys. Come on. Anyone? Changing mindsets. Not the academic definition, but it does change mindsets. No one wants to guess the definition of transformative learning theory, or the key principles of transformative learning theory. Some of you guys lied who raised your hand. I thought some of you raised your hands. Okay, cool. That is actually also true. So I'll give you the answer, the official definition, but both of you are correct in terms of the impact. So I only have one free T-shirt. Just for trying, I'm going to give it to you because you were the one to be brave enough. But transformative learning theory is the idea that adults, it's actually based on the science and research of adult learning. It says that adults learn through 3 things: through reflection, we have to make meaning of things; 2, we need to discuss and debate in dialogue; 3, we have to apply. If we don't do these 3 things, it's very difficult for us to learn. So what we've done is we've just taken that principle in the science and research, which has been around for about 30, 40 years, and we apply that in technology. We call it learn, think, apply, and share, right? So that's transformative learning simplified. And what it does is it actually increases ownership of the learning experience. And so if you think about a piece of content and you think about how it's applied in technology, I could teach you, let's go on the whole leadership theme. Let's say I want to, the principle is around ownership and around speaking up and having courage. After I give you a video to inspire, actually maybe we take one of our speakers' videos, inspire you about taking ownership, then we would have you think about, what does that mean to you in your context? What are the challenges that you face of taking ownership within your organization? Pause. Then you have time to reflect. What action would you like to take today to take greater ownership in the capacity that you're serving in? Apply. Now let's share that in the group and community so you can give each other feedback and learn from each other. Powerful. It increases ownership, relevance, and the ability for people as they share, they take greater ownership of what they've said. It's kind of like writing down your goals. And when you do that, you have a higher likelihood of applying that. And so then the idea of then doing that, how do we do that now at massive scale? Not just for the people who are sitting in this room, but for the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of employees who are not in this room today. How are we going to reach them? How are we going to replicate and scale that experience? So that device that we take to the toilets. How many of you take your phones to the toilets? Oh, this is a very shy group. Very shy. Over 80% of us, research says, take our phones to the toilet. There has never been a technology device like the mobile phone, which we literally get nervous if it's not within like grabbing distance. So there's something very unique about this device. And so if you think about mobility, over 1 billion people are actually accessing their content and learning on their mobile phones. So now, our private time could be used for learning as well, right? And not just the toilet, but your taxis and your commutes and all this time, because we are actually in our phones all the time. This is some research which is, probably a little bit even outdated. 4 hours of phone, 4 hours, probably some of us a little bit more. And I know that Apple has just done this new thing. So I don't know how many hours you guys are spending on your phones, but I mean, it's pretty scary, actually. It's pretty scary. And we touch these things like about 3,000 times a day. So if you think about that, and the fact that this technology device is, at least in the short term, here to stay, we have to then design for a mobile-first user. Now, these days, if you are not mobile responsive, you're not relevant. Yeah. So you have to, at minimum, be mobile responsive. But mobile first designed for the learner and assumed the learner was sitting or standing. No, mobile first. If you design for mobile first user, what do you assume about your learner? They're on the go. They're on the go. So if you're designing for a learner who's on the go, are you going to do a 10-minute video? Are you going to do complicated stuff? Are you going to do big charts with small little fonts? You would design for that small little device. So that's really the power. So you have to think differently and imagine the content differently. And we call it Gnowbify the content, which means bite-size it so that it's actually consumable by the learner who is on the go. And so this is just a very, very kind of example of mobile first. When you do mobile responsive design, you're designing for the big web, which assumed the learner was sitting, and then you shrink it down. So that experience, what do you think? Not so great. It was not fit for purpose. Whereas if you do actually mobile first design and you go out to the web, it's still a pretty good experience. It's like seeing it on high definition TV. And so I think the idea of the touches is, how do we take some of those touches and really translate those into learning and self-development? Wouldn't that be cool? And so in order to do that, what is actually required? It has to be easy. I know you guys are very busy. The HR, learning, development, OD, there's lots of fires to fight, and people say, oh, it's really cool, but we don't have a lot of time. And so it has to be simple and easy. And why do authoring tools have to be only known by 2 or 3 people who take 3 months to learn how to use the system? So any change you make, you have to go talk to those 2 or 3 people. If they're on holiday, too bad. Why does it have to be like that? Why can't we empower anyone and everyone in the organization to be able to create content and share knowledge? Why don't we make it so easy that a 7-year-old child can create content? And unfortunately, we know that even though we all love the idea of learning, sometimes we just need a little bit extra push, a little bit of a little reward, a little nudge to actually help us, a little bit of competition for those of us who are competitive to find out what ranking you are. And so depending on who we are, the idea of applying gamification and rewards, because actually learning should be fun. Learning should be fun. Somewhere along the way, we said fun shouldn't be part of corporate learning, but why not? Right? Because we know that when we have fun and we enjoy things, we actually also retain things more. And so I think the idea then of really evolving the way we think about learning from just knowing, but to application and then sharing in the community, because that's when we build off of each other's experiences. How did you do it? How did you do it? What challenges did you face? How did you solve that challenge? And the more that we can do that, then we actually create collective shared knowledge, which is absolutely critical, especially in the modern workforce and the future of work. And so I think when we think about this future of work and flatter organizations and the idea that there's not just one expert to many, but more of a many-to-many model, I think we need to create more platforms that allow for that kind of collaboration to take place. So We also know that if enterprises were actually using more mobile phones, that the productivity would increase. And one of the interesting facts I'll share, which maybe I shouldn't share in Europe, but I'll share it anyway, because is that a lot of our users who actually access Gnowbe will do it on the commutes to work at 9 a.m. and the other peak time is 9 p.m. because they actually don't see it as work. They just find it fun. And so no one tells them that they should do it. They can still do it, but traditional e-learning is usually done between 9 and 5. They sit down at the office and log in. But for some reason, the thing on the phone, it's fun. There's little quotes and game. Like, it just seems more fun, and that they access it at different hours of the day. So ultimately, I think the idea is how can we encourage in our cultures this idea of application and applied learning, so no matter what it is. You know, if we actually started to apply some of the stuff we learned in compliance, Deutsche Bank wouldn't be in the situation it was, right? I'm sure they checked all the boxes on compliance, but they didn't apply some of the principles that they learned, right, in terms of risk. But in all things, whether it's sales, just because I learned something in sales, how do I apply that quickly, a new technique? How do I practice that? So whether it's something boring, something more interesting, I think the idea is really about the application, because that's really where you get the business impact, where you get the big ROI. But at the end of the day, it actually just starts with our own minds. It starts with everyone in this room disrupting ourselves to really empower ourselves first before we can empower organizations. Because I think in this future of work, it's really about elevation of humanity. Thank you very much.